Hi, everyone. My name is Haley, and I'm the president of MCR for the 2025 to 2026 school year.
Hi everyone, I'm Pankhuri and I'm the Vice President of MCR.
Hi everyone, I'm Zain and I'm the treasurer for MCR.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna and I'm the secretary for MCR.
So today we're just going to be going through the executive board application and going through it step by step in case you have any questions or are just unsure of what to fill out. So first, just a couple of reminders. Our executive board applications are due on Monday, May 30th at 11:59 p.m. So just make sure that you're preparing your application and you have it ready to submit by then. As a reminder, our executive board meetings are mandatory for all admitted executive board members. So if you do get admitted, you're required to come to our meeting on June 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Carver Educational Services Center. However, these meetings are open to everyone and everyone is encouraged to attend our meetings. So even if you aren't admitted or even if you just want to learn more about what MCR is, you should definitely come to this meeting as well. We'll be holding interviews for some of our applicants from June 1st to June 7th. As a reminder, an interview is not a good indicator or a bad indicator. We're just going to hold interviews to get to know our applicants better. So you should not take it, um, you know, to heart if you don't receive an interview or if you do. And if you have any questions about the application at all, please feel free to contact MCR at mcr.sga@gmail.com. Or you can also contact Mrs. Cherry, who is our advisor, at her email right there, or visit our website to learn more about who we are. You can also contact any of our officers individually on Instagram to learn more if you have any questions.
Yeah, so before applying, I would highly recommend that you go through the actual executive board duties and responsibilities of the positions you're applying for. You can look at what you'll actually be doing and see what you're actually interested in. Remember, as a member of the executive board, you are expected to work actively throughout the entire year, meaning attending meetings, do your work, and playing your part. Remember, MCR executive board members have to attend every single board meeting and general assemblies, as well as MCR sponsored events, unless you're excused. I would look through the position descriptions there to see what you're interested in, and then look at the application criteria to see what we're actually evaluating on when we're looking at your application. You can go through the YouTube playlist to see our MCR application online workshops, and then you can move on to completing the application. Make sure that your application is on a separate Word or Google Doc so you can save them just in case anything gets lost.
So next is just general information, just your name, first and last name, your pronouns, your student ID number, and what high school you are currently attending or will be attending in the next school year. Then you give us your personal email, your phone number, and the grade that you'll be in for the next year, and if you have applied to MCR before.
Okay, thank you, Zane. So as Zane mentioned, you'll be indicating whether you've been a returning member or not. And if you are, we're just going to ask you to tell us what experience that you've had with MCR before and what positions that you've held, including how many executive board meetings that you've attended and what works and projects that you've done without the past year or the past few years. But if you're not a returning member, don't be like ashamed that you're not someone that's returning. We're accepting of all students. And for returning members, was just trying to gauge what you can either improve on or what you want to continue throughout the next year.
Okay, so now moving towards our next part of the application. This is the bulk of the application where you'll be answering questions pertaining to the specific positions you hope to apply for. So here you'll just indicate what positions you want to apply for as your first choice position, or in other words, the position that you want the most. Just to kind of give a quick overview of all of our departments, the first is we have our Chief of Staff department. That's split up into our main Chief of Staff, a Deputy Chief of Staff of Advocacy and Policy, Community Engagement and Operations. This Chief of Staff team is to facilitate communication between your departments and the officers. They'll be kind of that bridge that connects the officers to the entire executive board, and we'll just ensure that you guys are collaborating with each other, that you're on track, and that you're keeping everyone updated throughout the school year.
Yeah, then next is your operations team. This will consist of two people, the parliamentarian and the social coordinator. As the parliamentarian, you should be helping the council, the president, and all the officers on parliamentary procedure and host a parliamentary procedure workshop for executive board members. And second is social coordinator, where you're going to plan most of the fun events that we have, like potlucks or other activities for bonding events.
So next up is the Department of Finance and the Director of Finance. So the Finance Department really just oversees all finances of MCR. They work with the treasurer to plan fundraisers, and they work to ensure that we keep our funds up to date with the system.
Next is the Technical Operations Department, which is new this year, but essentially is the same thing as last year, where the webmasters had the duty of having up to date for our websites and other technical operations. But the reason that we switched this as an own operation is to make sure we're having smooth lines of communication. So the director and deputy essentially have the same responsibilities, except as a director, you'd be overseeing more and having more responsibilities for the communication aspect.
Our next department is the Department of Service Initiatives, and this is kind of exactly what it sounds like. You'll be planning events, community events such as drives. We also plan a Save a Student Summit that happens every year. Another thing that you'll be doing is connecting with local charities and just all in all, making sure that we're giving back to the community through various initiatives.
Yeah, so your next department is the workshops department. This will consist of two different sections. First would be workshop coordinators, where you're actively recruiting presenters for MCR workshops and hosting your own MCR workshop like academies. Second is leadership academies, where you'll host two different sessions across the year, which is leadership academy program, and you'll be helping with application and registration for actually creating these workshops.
Yeah, and the next department will be community relations. So you see that there's three little like departments or little positions. So there's the director, there's the liaisons, and then there's special education liaison. So essentially what this department does is making sure that we're kind of reaching out to the community and other based organizations because MCR can't just run on itself. We need the help of other student organizations and people who are very committed to the role. So primarily this would be liaising and kind of a lot of the outreach aspect.
The next department we have is the Department of School Communications, which is kind of in line with community relations. Instead, this department works to connect with your schools. So they'll outreach to your SGA advisors, to your SGA presidents, SGA vice presidents, and they'll make sure that you're cognizant of opportunities that MCR has to offer. It'll also work with maybe many of your clubs just to make sure that we're keeping all of your schools in the loop.
Yeah, so the next department is the Department of Educational Policy. So this will be two directors and then five or more deputies, where you'll be kind of researching policies and regulations right now that are under the Board of Education and preparing at least one testimony and training like the actual aspects of MCR and coordinating with Department of Legislative Affairs.
Yeah. And next will be the director and kind of like the legislative affairs, as Pan mentioned. So this is a little bit on the legislative aspect. So that's planning for our advocacy days and making sure that we're very involved and having a lot of connections with our state legislators and representatives.
Really quickly, right above that, you'll also see the Director of Communications, which also has a lot, sorry, apologies, Department of Communications, which also has a lot to do with outreach. So they'll be making posts for our Instagram, they'll work on our magazine, work on publications that will be shared with all of you all. So mainly just keeping everyone and all of the students in MCPS in the loop. And our last department is the Department of Task Forces. And the Department of Task Forces conducts projects that are centered on specific issues. So, for example, we have the drug and opioid crisis, we have the environmental affairs, and we have mental health. Those are three of the five of the task forces that they offer, and they're just making sure that we're getting people outside of the executive board involved in issue-focused specific projects.
And then finally, you can apply to be a special elections deputy, where you'll be learning how to actually conduct the election processes for like student member of the board and MCR officers.
Yeah, and next, just we love to welcome your input. Every year there's always some sort of change to the executive board. This year we had to move around a few departments to increase efficiency. So if you do have any application input or any positions that you would like to see in the future, you can list it there and I'll move it on to someone else.
Okay, so the next part of our application is just asking you guys why you have been drawn to apply for your first choice position, as well as any of the ideas that you have. So just anything that you want to see within MCR, anything that you want to achieve within the school year, you would just place that here. I'll pass it off to Pankhuri to talk about this part.
Yeah, so next we encourage you to talk about the experience that you've had that you think will help you in your actual position that you're applying for and being overall a good executive board member. This can range anything from school clubs to any leadership positions or any volunteering or honestly anything that you think you can bring to the table to be an MCR member. And you should also recognize that MCR is a really big time commitment. You need to be able to understand that you should be able to put this time, and by applying and committing, you're applying and committing to the time that you need to put into MCR. And we want to make sure that you're staying up to date and committed throughout the year.
To go off of that, that's why we also ask you to answer how busy you're going to be this school year. Is rank it from 1 to 10. And again, when we're looking for a chief of staff, we want people who are really hardworking. So we're asking for your productivity and accountability and how you will make sure that you are on top of things for the next school year. And so the same thing with the chief of staff, we want to know what you want to accomplish next year. So what's your biggest goal? What's one thing that you really want to push for in the next school year of the executive board?
Yeah, and then obviously, after you apply for your first position, you're going to apply for your second choice position, which is the same exact process. So if we scroll all the way down to more of the position specific questions. So as Zane just mentioned, or in general for all the positions that we have, we want specific questions pertaining to your department so we know a little bit more about how you would kind of manage or what kind of expertise you might bring to the department. So for the first two questions, this is to chief of staff and deputy chief of staff, and the second one is to any director or task force coordinator. So this is kind of how will you oversee your department's communication, and overall, how will you be a leader in your department and making sure that you're holding other people accountable.
Yeah, really make sure that you guys are paying attention to the department that you applied for and what the position specific prompts are, just so that you're not missing it and that you have every component of your application that you need. So the next three boxes are for our Leadership Academy coordinator, which is under our workshops department, our historian, and our parliamentarian. So again, make sure that you're answering your position specific questions and make sure that you are fulfilling all the criteria that we have asked you in the question.
Yeah, so for the next three questions, it's directed towards community relations and school communications, communications for press and media, and then communications for media only. Remember, for communications, it's a pretty big department and they have different duties for each position. So make sure you're looking through how you should actually be responding and what your actual duties are under these positions.
So the next box is about technical operations. Again, it's another position specific question. So technical operations is our new department this year. And so with that, we want to make sure that everything is up to date and you are able to use your technical skills to the best of your ability to keep MCR eye-catching to the public. And so how will you be able to use your time wisely and ensure that the website is visually appealing?
So if you also know, we have MASC, which is kind of our larger branch for SGA, and a lot of the times we go to different conferences and bring back ideas from workshops. So these questions are kind of more prompted to the workshop coordinators who have to have workshops throughout the year, and we're making sure that you are kind of specifically trained and you're able to kind of have ideas to bring to the table.
And as we mentioned before, we also have the educational policy departments and our legislative affairs departments. So these specific prompts are going to be tailored more towards policy issues and what you want to do with legislators. So really make sure that you guys are thinking outside of the box here, thinking about the ways that we can ensure that our work is impactful through policymaking.
Yeah, so for the next three is for finance, social, and special elections. So for these, obviously, you're going to focus on what they were actually looking for. For example, social coordinator, you'd want to see what kind of bonding events that you have and what ideas will be everybody will kind of enjoy. And special elections, you can talk about how you're actually going to help voter turnout and keep retention and actual turnout to make sure we hit quorum.
And the next box is for our language coordinators, and we want to make sure that we are able to outreach to as many people if they speak English or if they speak another language. So just explain your ideas on how you want to connect with students who do not speak primarily English.
Yeah, so if you scroll down to the bottom, which are interview dates, so this is almost done. But as Haley mentioned before, whether you get an interview or you don't doesn't affect anything about your status for your application. It just means that if you do, we might want to learn a little bit more about you. So don't be stressed. But here you just click what your available dates are and which interview dates don't work for you. So just make sure you're checking back with your calendar and being as accurate as possible because we want to make sure that there's not as much logistic problems this year. So, yeah.
And then this is the final section where we talk about just some dates to look out for. So the first thing is, since the applications are due May 30th at 11:59 p.m., we'll be sending out notices of who will receive an interview and when your interviews are on the 30th and 31st. Another thing to keep in mind is that oftentimes Google Forms might glitch out, or there might not be enough information or like upload boxes for all of the documents that you want to submit. If that is the case, then please feel free to email mcr.sga@gmail.com with any other letters of recommendations or any other materials that you would like to submit. Make sure that you do include in the subject line your name and that it's for the executive board application, just so we know who you are and what the purpose is.
Yeah, and look out for when accepted that our first executive board meeting will be on June 10th from 6 to 8 at Carver Educational Center in Rockville. So this will be a first meeting, so you'll be able to get to know a lot of your department, a lot of other people in MCR, whether or not you're on the executive board. So please remember that if admitted, it is mandatory that you come and show up, but even if not admitted, please come and show up. We would love to hear your input and voice on things that we're talking about.
Yes, so that is the conclusion of our executive board application walkthrough for the 2025 to 2026 school year. We are hosting an Instagram Live on May 19th at 5 p.m. So if you have any questions that we did not answer here, feel free to hop on to Instagram and go to our account at MCR-SGA to come onto the live and ask your questions. Me and Pankhuri will be there to answer any pressing questions that you have. If there's anything else, please feel free to reach out to any of our personal Instagrams or to the MCR email, as well as our advisor, Mrs. Cherry, with the contact information at the beginning of the application. But yeah, thank you guys so much.